Hi there. My name is Lesia Kahoot, and I am so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for dropping in. This video is the first in a series of 3 where I'll be talking a little bit about happiness. Happiness and the idea that you can stop chasing your dreams and just live the happiness that you already are. Before I tell you about that, though, let me introduce myself because I'm sure that there are a bunch of you who have no idea who I am and are wondering, why should I even bother sticking in and listening to what Lasia has to say? So basically, what drives me, what I feel is my life's purpose and the big call on my heart is to empower the conscious awakening of humanity so that together we can cultivate a global community founded in love. It wasn't always this way, though. In fact, the work that I'm doing right now, the work of soul excavation, wasn't something that I was doing until recently. For over 20 years, I was actually in the food industry, working as an eco pastry chef, and that was really what I thought my life was going to be all about. So so right now, what does soul excavator look like? What's the work of soul excavation? Well, it's basically supporting clients in digging into, unearthing, and exploring what's keeping them stuck in the muck, what's keeping them from living the infinitely powerful, vibrant, super awesomeness that they truly are at their core. But in order for me to sort of like illustrate what it is that I do, I'm going to tell you a little bit about an experience that is one of my sort of big experiences in my life that really colored and influenced who I feel I am and what I'm doing right now. And it had to do with my bakery that I had in Toronto several years ago. So, about 8 years into the food business, I had been a one-woman show. I was doing handmade, high-end chocolates, confections. I was doing wedding cakes and special occasion cakes for other people. Worked out of my basement and worked a lot. You know, it was very creative. It was very artistic. Definitely made people happy. It was something that when I first started out doing it, it just came naturally, and I thought, you know, if I can make food for people and make them feel special, and I can bring joy into their lives, and I can feed them, and I can be creative and artistic with it, you know, there's always something to learn. So it'll be this expansive experience. I just thought this would be amazing. However, I very quickly realized, especially as my business grew, that it was really hard work, that most of the time I was spending time working on other people's special occasions and celebrations, not mine or my family's, and that I was working a lot. And so it got to the point, especially after I'd had our daughter, when she was about 2 years old, I was thinking, you know, maybe this isn't the way to go. I mean, this was a dream. I kind of made the dream come true, but I was starting to feel this sort of, you know, it's too much, you know, like life shouldn't be this hard. And I definitely shouldn't be working this much for this little amount of money. So I was going to close it down and do something else. However, circumstances were such that I actually decided to kind of go big or go home. So after 10 years in the food industry, I opened up my own bakery. And it actually was Toronto's first organic pastry shop that really focused on using certified organic and fairly traded ingredients. And we had a very, very, very significant sustainable aspect to our business. It was a dream come true, but it was a bit of a nightmare getting there. And then after we opened, it just kind of went downhill from there. So so when we opened, it was about 6 months after we were supposed to open, you know, so over budget, opening late. And I do remember talking to the contractor about 6 months before we opened, saying, if we don't open by this date, we're never going to recover. You know, way to put something out into the universe, right? So we opened and it was very exciting and it was down to the wire. Like I remember we didn't even get our doors, our front doors to the bakery, you know, until about an hour before our grand opening. And so there was just this sense of anxiety and exhilaration and fear and newness and, you know, all of this mixed in all together all the time. And then we opened. we opened, and then it was like, okay, we've built this thing up over the last 2 years, and now we're actually here, and now we have to make it work. And in those few months leading up to the opening, there were so many people who were coming to me who were saying, are you crazy? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know the state of the economy in the world right now? To open a high-end bakery, sort of like an indulgence, a luxury, it's never going to work. And I just thought, what are you talking about? This is a dream. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm moving on from what I had to something bigger and more expansive. And I had a lot of support, as well. I had investors, I had loans, the catering companies that I'd been working with all, came together and said, yes, we're going to support you, through your this transition. However, a few months in, it was like all of a sudden one day I looked around and I saw what so many other people were telling me and asking me, which was, oh my gosh, what have I done? And just like not even 6 months in, I had to let go about half of the staff. We just weren't making money. I had to get more money, invested and injected into the business so that we could keep going. We had to change and adapt so quickly, almost on a day-to-day kind of basis. And it was incredibly stressful. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, some of the stuff that happened while I had that bakery was just so amazing and so life affirming. The staff that I had was phenomenal. The interns that walked through there were fantastic. Many of them ended up getting jobs. I still keep in touch with a lot of those people today because we became friends, and it's been amazing seeing how their families have grown and evolved and what everyone else is doing today. And then there were these, just almost like angels. It's not a word that I use very often, but these angels that would just appear seemingly out of nowhere, ready to lend a helping hand because they just believed so much in what we were doing. Whether it was actually coming into the kitchen and spending some time in the kitchen working with us, whether it was helping us out at the farmers markets, whether it was, coming in for a few hours to package little cookies that we were giving out an event because we were running out of time and we had to get it done. I mean, the community love was amazing. And the accolades and the awards were also fantastic. The media coverage was fantastic, but it was never enough. It was never enough to make me feel like, this is a success, this is working, because all I could focus on was what wasn't working, what was failing, what needed attention, because it wasn't looking the way that I had set it up in my mind. So after 4.5 years, we decided to close it down. And that was one of the best decisions I could have made, but it was hard. It was hard because it ended up meaning that the business was a financial failure. It meant admitting that. It meant that all the investment, ours and everyone else's, was lost. It meant that we had to give up our home that we had built over the last 12 years, our home where our daughter was actually born in. We had to give that up so that we could pay off some of the debt that had been incurred with that bakery. And so it was painful. It was traumatic. There was just this immense sense of loss. And then there was this different loss, this other loss that I didn't even expect to feel, which was, once I stopped working, who was I? I had no idea. I had been in the food industry for nearly 20 years, and that's what I did. And for me, that's who I was. So if I were no longer working, if I were no longer this pastry chef, if I were no longer this award-winning, person who had created all of these things and participated in these events and judged at this event, who was I? So I felt lost. I felt empty. I felt confused. And I just felt completely heartbroken. So, feeling that way while starting to kind of put our family back together again after all of that trauma, let's say, starting to wonder what it is that I could do, because I felt so guilty for all of the stuff that I put my husband through, that I put my daughter through. I mean, when I was at the bakery, I missed a lot of my young daughter's life. People at her school didn't even know who her mom was because I was always at the bakery and never at the school or at any family events or anything like that. And I knew that that was, a completely unbalanced way to live, that the attention was in the wrong place, and that there was no balance, essentially, right? So, of course, things weren't working out. But there was this guilt. And I thought, if I don't do something to support my family, if I don't do something to redeem myself, if I don't do something to show everyone that I actually am worthy of, being a member of my community, of being a functioning, valuable, contributing member of my family, then I don't know what I'm going to do. So I jumped back into the farmers markets, stayed as a one woman show again, and actually made the business viable. However, again, all the community love, all the accolades that came, all the opportunities to really step up and show myself, in the industry, even being financially viable at that point, none of it was enough to make me feel good, to make me feel good about myself or how I was showing up in life. So eventually, I ended up moving into the integrative nutrition health coaching field, which actually started to feel better because it felt like not only was I making these beautiful, intricate, delicious tasting desserts, but I was actually supporting people in creating a better life experience for themselves through sustainable dietary and lifestyle choices. And to me, that sort of felt like I was doing something more valuable than just making good looking, good tasting food. But I was still very tied into the work that I was doing. And then, almost accidentally, but I believe there is no accident, I stumbled onto my spiritual path. And when I did that, when that happened, that kind of blew my world open to understanding who and what I really am, and how the way that I had been living my life, which was really from the outside in, why it wasn't working, and why even when I did, receive that community love, when I did receive the accolades and win awards, and even finally got my business financially viable, why that never seemed like enough. So, you know what? I'm just going to take a sip of water because my throat's a little dry, and I'm just going to do it. Okay, that's better. Thank you. So there were two amazing things that I learned when I stumbled onto the spiritual path. One was that there is only one thing going on. Call it energy, call it source, call it spirit, call it love, whatever works for you. There is only this one incredible, amazing thing that is going on that is the very essence, the very foundation of everyone and everything. And because it is the essence, because everyone and everything is that thing, we're all interconnected. So there is no separation. There's nothing outside of myself. I mean, it may seem like, I'm here, you're there, but ultimately, this energy is everywhere and it is everything all the time. Now, this energy is also infinite in scope and it is creative by nature. So it's always expanding, it's always growing, and it's always expressing through and as everyone and everything. And the more I thought about, this infinitude, this continual creativity and expansion, the more I started to realize, if that's the only thing that's going on, then that means that I'm infinite in scope, that I am creative by nature, something I already knew, but like in a bigger way, and that I am always expanding and expressing in a bigger, more powerful, more creative way, as long as that's what I choose. And then the other part of it was this quote that I heard by Judge Thomas Troward, who's someone that I had actually heard Wayne Dyer quote a few times. And the quote is, "Principle is not bound by precedent." Sounds a little jargony and maybe like old fashioned, but when I first heard it and then I heard it explained, totally blew my mind because it completely sort of demystified or allowed me to shift my perspective on what failure and past events meant. So principle is not bound by precedent. What it means is that no matter what has happened in the past, there is nothing that has ever happened that has any bearing on who you are right now. And so if we take that sentence apart, principle, that's who and what I am, that's who and what you are, that's who and what everyone and everything is. That infinite expansive universe, that infinite cosmic energy that is always in play. That's who and what we are, no matter what. Precedent is the what happened part. So it doesn't matter what happened because it just happened. And here's the really cool thing. It happened once. The thing that keeps us stuck in the muck a lot of times is the fact that we keep remembering. We stay in relationship to this thing that happened, and we keep remembering the feelings that were associated with that event in that moment, and we keep dragging those feelings into the present moment. We keep retelling our story, right? And for a while, that might serve us. But eventually, it doesn't, because that's part of what keeps us stuck in the muck. So principle is not bound by precedent. I am who I am, who I am all the time, no matter what has happened. So, knowing that and discovering, that I am infinite energy, that I am this infinite creativity that is always in play, not only did that feel powerful, it felt so liberating. Do you remember when you were a little kid and the number of times you would say to someone who was trying to tell you something to do something or whatever, and you'd go, "You're not the boss of me." Well, this is that. It's like there's nothing outside of ourselves. There's no one, no thing, no experience, anything that is the boss of who we are. We are the boss, like innately. We are the boss of ourselves all the time. And it's only when we forget that things kind of start to go awry, or that our life isn't flowing the way that we would like. So rediscovering that I am the boss of me felt really powerful and really liberating. Which brings me to this, I'll be happy when syndrome. You know what I'm talking about. I'll be happy when I get a better job. I'll be happy when I have more money in my bank account. I'll be happy when I have a better body. And the big one these days, I'll be happy when COVID-19 is finally over, the world opens up, and I can go back to living my normal life. Well, here's the thing about this I'll be happy when thinking. Two main issues that I can see. One, conditional thinking. That's when we are continuously looking to someone or something outside of ourselves to make us feel happy inside. Okay. The other part of it is the when part of that statement. That's futuristic thinking. And what's the future? The future is always something in the future. It's something that never comes. So if you are constantly focusing on the I'll be happy when part, you are constantly chasing after something or someone that never comes. So ultimately, even if we do find, like, even when I was talking about, I had the money, I had the community love, I had the awards, I had the accolades. But even if, we do end up getting the stuff that we're supposedly chasing after, it ends up feeling empty, and that feeling doesn't last because it's something that, we're looking for from the outside rather than living from the inside out, living that infinite, powerful, vibrant awesomeness that we truly are, living that happiness that we truly are. So what's the solution? Well, we shift our focus. We shift our focus from chasing something outside of ourselves to looking within, to remembering who and what we truly are, to realizing that there's only one thing going on. Call it energy, call it source, call it spirit, call it love, call it whatever works for you. But that is the essence of everyone and everything. That is the power of the blazing sun in the sky. That is the thing that holds all the stars and the galaxies in space. That is what activates that tiny little seedling to sprout and push its way up through the soil and become this beautiful, amazing, nourishing plant in your garden that you then harvest and you eat, and you get all this nourishment and energy out of it. That is what activates and animates every single cell in our bodies, that fuels every single organ, every single system, that basically breathes us into being who and what we are every moment of every day. How amazing is that? To realize that that's who and what we are, to identify as that, and to start to consciously choose to live from that rather than looking to something out here to make us feel better about our lives. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to do an exercise with you. So wherever you are, I'd like to invite you to just get comfortable. Close your eyes if that feels good, and then just allow yourself to take a deep, nourishing, life-affirming breath. And as you let it out, just let go of everything that came before this moment and just allow yourself to become really present right here, right now. And so now, still with your eyes closed, I invite you to remember a time where you felt so happy, like really, truly happy. It was just so liberating, so amazing, so powerful, so life-affirming. Maybe you were with a loved one. Maybe you're thinking of your pet. Maybe you were somewhere in nature. Or maybe it's some experience that you had, maybe when you were traveling, maybe you achieved a goal that you'd been working on. Maybe you were attending a live event, like some super awesome live concert with thousands of people, or maybe only like 50 people in a tiny venue. Or maybe it was, the championship sporting event and your team won, for that season. Whatever it was, just feel in your body what it felt like to be there, to experience, whatever it is that you were doing. And now, open your eyes. I bet some of you are smiling. And I'm going to ask you, did you just go anywhere, or did you meet anyone to feel what you were feeling just now? No. You did it all on your own by consciously using your mind. By consciously using your mind to remember the feeling, to feel it in your body. And in doing so, you created a life experience for yourself right now in this moment, which is already past, where you felt happy. You didn't need anyone outside of yourself. You didn't need anything outside of yourself to feel happy in that moment right now. So I can already hear some of you saying, okay, Lesia, that's fine and great. You walked us through this exercise. I might even be able to wrap my head around how there's only one thing going on. And maybe, all of us are that thing. But, I actually want more money. I actually have dreams that I want to accomplish. And what about when I've gotten what I want, but, it just doesn't last? You talked a little bit about that, but what about that? What's behind that kind of thing? Well, that brings us to what I'm going to be talking about in video number 2. And so that is all about how, even though we can realize that we buy into, that there's only one thing going on, that everyone and everything is this thing, whether it's energy, source, spirit, love, whatever you want to call it, that's what's happening. We can even start to, identify that, that is who and what I am, and consciously choose to live from that. But just because I think, I want to have $1,000 in my bank account right now, the $1,000 doesn't appear. Well, that talks to what is behind the thoughts that we're thinking, what is behind what it is that we're putting out into our life experience, what's creating our life experience. And that brings us to beliefs that a lot of time are limiting, beliefs that a lot of time we don't even know are there. And until we dig into and unearth and start to explore those limiting beliefs in play, then we're actually almost sending mixed messages out into the universe saying, I want this, but this is what I believe behind that. So here's what I'm going to get. And that's what we're going to look into, limiting beliefs. Okay, so for now, I just thank you for being here, and I'm so grateful for your presence, for your time, for your support, for your interest, And I so look forward to seeing you for video number 2. So until video number 2, just remember that, you know, there is only one thing going on. Everyone and everything is that thing in its entirety. That thing is infinite in scope, creative by nature, which means you're infinite in scope, you're creative by nature, and that you are always at choice to consciously choose to live from that, you know, that happiness, that awesomeness that you innately are, rather than be chasing something outside of yourself to make you feel happy and better about the life that you want to live. Okay, so thank you for your time, for your presence. I appreciate you. I am so grateful for you, and I will see you for video number 2. Bye for now.